I've got some things I need to do in the kitchen today. For one, I need to put up our peppers that we saved from that hard freeze that we had last week. Matt has requested more pepper jelly, so I'm going to work on those. And then I need to start putting up some of my pumpkins and some of my winter squash and things like that. I usually do those a little bit at a time because I have so many. It's hard to do them all in one day. A lot of them I don't put up at all. I put them up by setting them in the corners of my kitchen, and then we eat on them through the winter. I do keep a really good check on them, so if I'm looking at them today and I happen to see one that's got a soft spot, I know I need to go ahead and put that in the freezer or cook it for supper that day. And mostly the way that I put up my winter squash, if I'm going to do that, is I freeze it. Sometimes I, like my big cushaws, I just cut them up and I cut them into cubes and I just put those in the freezer. I don't do anything to them once they're cut up and the skin's off and they're, you know, in a little, about an inch, I guess, cube. I put those in the freezer, maybe a little smaller than an inch. And then I will use those to make soup out of, to make pies out of, to roast. Although once you freeze squash like this, it never roasts as nice as it will when it's fresh, just because it gets the moisture. It just gets, you know how things are when you get frozen. When you freeze them and they get frozen, they kind of get waterlogged. So it's not as good for that, but it's a wonderful way to make soups and pies and things like that, cakes, different things. And I have a video where I share my 3 favorite cushaw recipes. I'll link to that. And those recipes could be used not just for the green and white striped cushaw that we love to grow, but also if you have pumpkin, if you have butternuts, if you have what I've got right here in front of me is a candy roaster. So a candy roaster squash grows in this shape, kind of like a banana. I've already cut where the stem was, I've cut that off and I've cut it in 2 here. And I like the flavor of them better than pumpkin, really. Now, I still grow pumpkins. I still like pumpkins, but I really love the flavor of candy roasters. And sadly, this year, this is the only one I grew. It's just this one. It's the only one that actually grew and matured enough to harvest late in the summer. Usually, a candy roaster will produce many fruits, mini squash on the one vine, but that didn't happen this year. And last year I don't think I had any candy roaster. I don't know, I'll have to go back and remember. A previous year to that I had several usually, but even one, if you just manage to grow one, it's a whole lot of food because they get fairly large, as you can see. So now that I've got it cut in 2 here, I'm going to scrape out all the insides. I like to use this is just an ice cream scoop, but it makes the job really easy. And then I'm going to put them in the oven. That's the other way that I preserve things. Mostly I would just cut them into cubes, like I said, especially the cushaws. And then you can later cook that and do anything you want to with it. Usually with my pumpkin and my candy roasters, I go ahead and bake them in the oven. I roast them, and then I get out all the pulp, scrape out all the pulp, and then I freeze it into amounts that I would, like, the things that I usually make, whether it's like a pumpkin or a candy roaster or pie, or if it's like a pumpkin roll or a candy roaster roll, because those things are all interchangeable. So that's usually what I do with those. Today I'm going to make something really special though with these, I think. I think it's really special. I love, though it's hard to say that because I love a good pumpkin pie or candy roaster pie, or all the breads you can make and the cakes and the soups just sounds so good when you think about it. But I'm going to make candy roaster cookies. Matt's been deer hunting for several days. He's been down in Georgia, so he's coming home today later. And I've got to put this up anyway, so I thought, well, that'd be really nice to make some cookies and have them for Matt when he comes home. And the cookie is really... It's really good any time of the year, but especially this time of the year. It has all those wonderful fall flavors when you think about ginger and cinnamon and all those. So I'm going to do that. So while I'm going to go ahead and start scraping out the inside here and get these in the oven so they can start baking. And then while it's baking, and I'll be working on my pepper jelly here for Matt too. Maybe I'll make him some cornbread for supper. I could cut up do one of my winter squash today too, one of my cushaws, and actually make some soup, and we could have that for supper. Have some pepper jelly, fresh pepper jelly to go with our cornbread. That might be what I do for this evening's meal. But as I'm scraping this out, getting all the seeds, you can definitely save the seeds for seed to use next year to replant. Also, you can roast them. You can do the same thing with them as you would do with pumpkin. They're just as good. The seeds are. You can roast them. If you've got animals, of course, you can feed them to your animals. If you've got chickens or anything like that that likes this stuff, my chickens love it. So lots of different things that you can also do with the innards of the candy roaster. I've seen some folks that actually they don't even bother to cut it like I've done here, whether it's a candy roaster, a pumpkin, or a squash, or whatever it is that they're doing. Let me lay that one. They don't bother to cut them and get the insides out. They go ahead and bake the whole thing. And there's some videos you can do a search, and I'm sure you find one. And it takes a little bit longer because it's still a complete pumpkin or candy roaster or whatever, and it just kind of sinks down. And then the insides are way easier to get out. It's easier. You don't have to worry about cutting it. When you start handling those big squash and pumpkins, it's hard to cut them. Sometimes it can be rather intimidating. Corey and Katie, I'm dropping seeds in the floor. They laugh at me and they're like, "Mama, you're gonna cut yourself." I'm like, "I've been doing this a long time, and I'm not that strong of a person, but I'm determined." So you just have to have some determination and actually do it. Just do it. Just do it the best you can. Some people have told me that their grandmother or aunt or whatever, somebody in their family that grew, maybe even their mother that grew squash like this, they would take them outside and just throw them down really hard on the sidewalk or something, and then that allowed them to easily get the pieces and either trim off the peeling if they wanted to do that and use them right away, or bake them, or whatever it was they were going to do. It was just an easier way than worrying about actually using a big knife. Okay. And when it comes to roasting them in the oven, like today, what I'm going to do so that I can get the flesh all out and make those delicious cookies for Matt. And if I've got any left over, I'm sure I will, because I'm not going to make that many cookies. I'll go ahead and put it in the freezer. I roast mine at about 400. Lots of people say different things. You just have to find what works for you. And some people actually put moisture like water in the bottom of their pan. I don't ever do that. I just put it in there and just let it go. Sometimes I line the pan with parchment paper, and then other times I don't do that at all. And you just keep a good check on it, but it takes at least 30 to 40, 45 minutes, something like that, to actually get it to where you can just peel the skin off and kind of scrape out that wonderful goodness. So it is easier though. When I was a girl, Granny, most of the time when she put up pumpkins, she went through the trouble of peeling them all and dicing them up and then boiling them. And you can certainly do that, but I think this is much easier just to put them in the oven and forget them. I managed to get the pepper jelly made. I ended up with about 12 pints. And just in time, Matt got home and we got to eat dinner together, and so he was able to try it, and he said it turned out really good. And it did, because I ate some too with some crackers. Really good. We love pepper jelly, so he's glad that we've got more to enjoy this winter. I also got my candy roasters out. You can see it's just like scooping up ice cream now after they've baked in the oven. Really makes it easy to get all that pulp out, and then I'll just divide it into the different little sizings that I'll need and put it in the freezer, and we'll be able to enjoy it all winter, whether I'm making pies or pumpkin rolls or cookies like I'm making today. Another thing I did with my peppers, what I had left over from the pepper jelly, I like to put them out. I just freeze my peppers for future use mostly, unless I'm making something like pepper jelly. But I just lay them all out flat on a baking dish, and then I put that baking dish in the freezer like a cookie sheet or something. And then once it's totally frozen, I scoop them out into a plastic Ziploc bag, and that way I can just get out a handful when I need them if I'm making, you know, whatever I'm making, soup or whatever it would be. So now I'm ready to make those wonderful candy roaster cookies that's just like every bite's like a taste of fall. It just has those wonderful fall flavors in them. Years ago, before me and Matt had our house built or anything, we were living with Pap and Granny. We were either just married or about to get married, and I was going to college, and I had to take an Appalachian Studies class. It seems strange to say that I never thought about taking one, looking backwards over my life, but at that time I really had never given any thought to my culture being any different than anybody else's all around the world. That was the class that first really made me start thinking about it in a different way, from our language to the foods to, you know, folklore, personality traits, the beautiful mountains, all those things. Mr. John Cabe was my teacher, my professor, and he was a fantastic professor. Well, in that class, towards the end of it, kind of culminating, we had to do a project. And Paul had already, I think he had already been to college before I even started, because I took several years off and was just working and wasn't even thinking about going to college. Anyway, so when it come to doing my project, he said, I know what you should do it on. You should do it on the Louvren Brothers. Do it from a musical standpoint and talk about Daddy and Ray and, you know, what the Louvren Brothers influenced their music. The Louvren Brothers were from northern Alabama. Actually, their last name was originally Loudermilk, I believe. Anyway, so that's what I did mine on, and it turned out good. And it was the first time I really got to hear myself like in a recording. We used one of those old, you know, those first camcorders that come out with the big bulky ones. It's first when I realized how I really sounded, you know, which I was kind of embarrassed about, but I did get a good grade in the class, so that was all good. Anyway, a lot of people in the class did theirs on different things, and as you might imagine, several people did theirs on foodways, on different parts of foodways of Appalachia. And there was one lady that did hers on the pumpkin. So you think about pumpkins, how important they played an important role in the foodways in days gone by, especially. But they were fairly easy to grow. They had long storage, and then there was just a variety of ways you could use them. So that was what her project was about. And she had she didn't do a video or anything. She talked before the class, and then she had some recipes that she handed out to everybody. And I kept those recipes, and I never made them. I just kept them, especially one of them. I must have really been intrigued with it, because I kept it for almost 20 years before I ever actually made it, which sounds crazy but true. I wanted to read to you what she said at the top of this one. So I'm making candy roaster cookies, but hers were actually pumpkin cookies. They were actually pumpkin. This is a family recipe that came from my great aunt Bess Shannon. She served us youngs these pumpkin cookies every Halloween when we went trick-or-treating at her house. I really love that history and that tie to her family that she remembered. I love the language that she says. She served us youngs, and then pumpkin, and then ever Halloween. I would say that too, ever, instead of every. I say ever, so I really love that. Anyway, for whatever reason, I kept that recipe for many, many years, and it had it in my recipe book after me and Matt was married and all that, but I never made them. Well, one year I, for whatever reason, decided it was time to make them. I think it was back, I'm reading off the Blind Pig and the Acorn, back in 2015, I finally decided it's time to make them. But instead of using pumpkin like she did, I decided I was going to use candy roaster. Well, again, as I was saying earlier in the video, you can interchange pumpkin, candy roaster, cushaw, butternut squash, all those can just easily be interchanged. So if you want to make these cookies, you don't have candy roaster, you could use pumpkin. You could use butternut squash if you have it. If you have the green and white striped cushaw, you could use that. Anyway, I finally decided I was going to make them. I made them, and we loved them. Every bite is just like a taste of fall. Tastes so good. It's just so good. And it's not too difficult of a cookie to whip up either, but it's just perfect for this time of the year. And the recipe is in mine and Jim Cassida's cookbook, Celebrating Southern Appalachian Food Recipes and Stories from Mountain Kitchens. So I'll put that link down below in case you're interested in that. But now I'm going to tell you the ingredients in the recipe. So you need 1/3 cup shortening, 1 1/3 cup sugar, 2 eggs, 1 cup cooked candy roaster, or again, you could use pumpkin, you could use cushaw or butternut squash, 1 teaspoon vanilla, 1 teaspoon grated lemon rind, 1 teaspoon lemon juice, 1/4 teaspoon ginger, 1/4 teaspoon allspice, 1 teaspoon nutmeg, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 cup of raisins, 1/2 cup chopped nuts. Pecans, English walnuts, and black walnuts are all good. I think even almonds would be good in it. And then 2 1/2 cups self-rising flour. So Corey helped me, and we've got all of our ingredients out here. It's really neat today that I'm getting to use fresh pecans. That never happens for me because pecan trees don't really grow where I'm at. It's just the winters get too cold. But I have fresh ones from a dear subscriber that sent them to our family. So we've been eating on them and enjoying them. She even went to the trouble to go ahead and have them cracked for us, so they're easy to open up, and they're so good. So that was great for this recipe. I have some right here. So now I'm going to go over to the mixer and show you how easy it is to whip these up. We're going to cream the sugar and the shortening together first. I'm going to add the eggs one at a time and mix well. Time for the candy roaster. The lemon juice, lemon peel, make sure get all of it, all the spices, all those wonderful flavors of fall. Smells so good already. Vanilla, mix it again. Time for the raisins and the nuts. Now time for the flour. Now we're ready to drop them on our baking sheet. You can grease the baking sheet. That's what her directions said to do. Or you could use parchment or one of the little mats that you use to bake cookies on. And the size of your cookies really is up to you. You can make great big ones or small ones. But they will spread. This is a cookie that spreads pretty good. So you kind of have to keep that in mind as you're baking them, how far apart they need to be. And we've got them we're going to put them in a 400-degree oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. Again, that'll depend on how large you make your cookies. When they come out of the oven, I'll let you see how they turn out. Got the cookies made. I made Matt come in so that he could taste one. You ready for one?
Yeah.
Of course, he knows he already likes them. I've already been tasting them, so I know they're good. I couldn't resist when they come out of the oven.
Yeah, it was good.
Taste of fall, isn't it?
It is. Very good.
Really taste the spices and the... really good.
Yeah, I like that.
Need a cup of coffee, Matt does, or a glass of milk to go with them.
In a correction, you didn't have to make them in here to eat these peaches.
Matt just come. But you can see how big they are, how big they spread. They really spread, so keep that in mind if you decide to make them. It's been a pretty productive day though. I've got my pepper jelly and got my candy roaster to put in the freezer. I've got many more winter squash I need to take care of. I was gonna make Matt some cushaw soup for supper, I said, but I think I've got too tired out. I think you may have an egg sandwich.
I don't care.
You don't care. He's easy to please. As always, we're always glad when you stop by to help us celebrate Appalachia. And I hope you enjoyed hearing the story of the pumpkin cookie, candy roaster cookie, and if you try them, I sure hope you like them as much as we do. Okay. Corey, come help me do a thumbnail with them.
We could do a dough burger
Yeah, we
if
could.
you'd like.
Sure.
They cook up not great big thick and so they'll cook in a hurry.
That'd be great.
What's Dad talking
If
about
you'd
cooking?
like.
I said I was going to make cushaw soup and I'm too tired, so I said egg sandwich, but he said we could have a dough burger.
Oh,
I said, sure, that sounds good.
We ain't gonna buy them.
We got buns.
I do.
The ones you don't like,
I
but
don't care. I can eat mine on white bread.
we've got Corey buns. Kind that Corey
Does Corey
likes.
want one too?
how many damn burgers you got?
I got several. There's 25 or 30 in there.
You and Austin want to eat with us? Or you want to make one and take it with you or something?
Yeah, do you have enough for me and Austin to eat for
There's
supper?
plenty of them. The burgers, yeah.